We live in a time where masculinity is shamed and men don't know what it means to be a man. As a pastor and counselor, I've spent the better part of my life equipping and training others. My goal with this show is to translate my hard-earned experience into tools and tactics to help you become stronger as a man. This is the BraveCo podcast. I'm your host, Jason Valentin. What's up, BraveCo men? This week, we are going to talk about failure and success. I'm your host, Jason Valentin. I'm here with my man, Greg Hendricks. Greg is an ambassador for BraveCo. He's a right-hand man. And man, we are excited to dive in here and talk about success and failure. Greg, what do you think, man?
Come on, man. I'm excited because all of us deal with this, how to process it, how to get through it, how to communicate it, all of this stuff. So I'm excited to dive into the conversation. I think this is going to bring a lot of health to a lot of people, including the men that are tuning in right now.
It's true. So we, like human beings, have so much potential, untapped potential. And it's really true. Like I often think that depending upon your background, upbringing, you know, what people go through. Like when I was growing up, I learned right away, I'm not good at school, right? That's what I learned going through school. I learned like, I'm not going to be very successful in life because I don't know how to do school. I'm not good at it. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at science. Bro, I couldn't hardly friggin' pay attention, you know? And I got this mindset, this like fixed mindset that I was going to have a hard time excelling. And I think a lot of times people start to believe things about themselves that limits them. And I know that Angela, I think her name is Dewick, talks about a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And we don't have to go into that a lot. But when we're talking about potential, like human beings have so much potential mentally, physically, spiritually. And I think one of the greatest hindrances to us unlocking our potential is we hate to fail.
Yeah.
We hate to try new things that might put us in the failure category and or we already think that we are a quote unquote failure, right? Like I'm just not going to be successful, whatever. Or I'm only good at like these few things. And we put ourselves in these boxes. But I think that you and me are a good example of like maybe a few areas that we would naturally think like, nah, that's not going to be me, you know, and then to see us kind of break off some of these boxes. So that's really what we want to do for men today is like, guys, we want to get you out of this box where you're afraid of success, where you don't understand how to fail successfully, and kind of break off this myth that you shouldn't be failing.
Right.
Because I don't know any guy that I really respect. And this is true. This isn't just like hype. Like I don't know any man that I really respect that doesn't have some major failures. Now, I'm not talking morally, but major failures that have helped him get to a really successful place. Greg, would you say that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the thing with failure in itself and success is oftentimes, you hit it earlier, people are a little bit apprehensive to venture out into something that they can't control, you know, or they can't curate the outcome. You'll give the effort, but you're desiring a certain outcome. And sometimes the real outcome can come in the failure, like not a quote unquote succeeding the way you thought you were going to succeed. That's gold in itself because it shows so many things on how you react to pressure, how you react to being, you know, not hitting a goal or an expectation, what you learn from it. Are you willing to learn from that? There's a whole lot in there that we can unpack, and I'm really excited about that. But then also too, like, I feel like people, and myself too, I've done this quite a bit, and this is something I didn't learn till probably really later on in life. Like there's just as much gold in failing than there is in succeeding. And if there's somebody else around you, you said something earlier about you don't know a man or you have more respect for a man, even when they're failing and how they failed and learning from that. I think there's a lot to learn. And it brings more credibility to you as a person because now you don't feel like you're just some superhuman being that don't ever make mistakes, don't ever fall on your face, don't ever, slip up and do something that is maybe quote unquote out of your character. But I think you grow closer to people and you grow closer to their story of redemption in communicating how you process failure, how you dealt with it, how you grew from it, what you learned. So all that I think is important. I actually have a story about that with one of the guys I got an opportunity to work with, which would really mark me, man. It really marked me. I wasn't even necessarily a believer in God at the time. I knew there was God, but I wasn't a believer in God. But I have a story about that with a professional athlete and his perspective on failure. It really shifted a perspective in me personally about what failure looked like and what success looked like.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I was at a John Maxwell conference last year with a good friend, Chad McCauley. And man, Maxwell's such a boss.
Shout out to my boy Chad. Shout out to Chad.
John Maxwell's such a beast, man. And I had going in, I didn't have very high expectations of what the conference was going to be. But then Maxwell sat down and started talking, like literally just sat down and like started talking. And bro, I couldn't stop taking notes. I was like, holy cow. I thought it was just going to be like, I don't know. I just had really low expectations. And I walked away from there going, this was the best leadership conference I've ever been to. And one thing that I remember him talking about was he was talking about his, I won't get the exact wording correct, but he was talking about his success journey. And he's got this like success journey. And what he says is that you can't separate success from failure because failure is feedback and you have to have feedback in order to succeed. Right. And I have this friend who also says feedback is the mother of learning. Although it's painful, right? Like how else are we going to learn and grow unless you have real feedback? Because you're not going to nail it every time. The first time. There's just no possible way. And so what Maxwell was saying is on a journey to success, right? Which this journey never ends because you never actually get to a place where you succeed and then stop.
Yeah.
You never arrive. So he's talking about like you have to first have an idea. Could be I want to be married, and so I got to go on this journey of dating this woman. Well, yeah, that is a failure and success journey, right? So you start in and you try some things. You take her on a date, you try to hold her hand, whatever. Maybe try to kiss her, and you're going to get a whole lot of feedback. You're like, oh man. I mean, just really practically speaking, like, whoa, you're moving too fast, or you're not pursuing her enough, or you're not being open enough, or you're being too close. Like you're on this journey. And, but what happens is he talks about like when you fail, he says you need to take a step back and begin to review what happened, assess what happened, right? Mm-hmm. So that you can mine all the gold out of your failures. And so use it as feedback. So you're looking at it from the scientist's perspective, not the judge. Like a judge is going like, who's the one guilty of failure? Shame on you. The scientist is going like, did we put enough water in the solution or did we not put enough, right? It's just looking at facts. And so Maxwell was saying like, when you are on a journey of success and you encounter failure, that is part of the, you have to have that. And knowing that you have to have it helps you to pull out all the shame out of it and then just look at it strategically. So I'm reviewing my actions. I'm reviewing the steps to see what is it that I can learn from this. And then he says, then you get all those answers out of there as much as you can. And then you try again, right? You go back to the research and development, like you implement and execute the plan again, right? So now I'm trying it again, and I get a little bit further and I reach another failure point. But that's also like, he talks about it as like this spiral, like you're spiraling up. And so he's talking about like you fail, like you start and you fail, and then you learn from that failure and there's more success, right? Because you learn from it and you climb that ladder. And at some point you hit another failure point. Right? It's like, oh, okay, now we're dating. I got this one. Like we're dating and we're at the like, I love you portion, and we're about to get married portion, but like, dang, I'm not doing a great job meeting her needs all the way here. Right. And you're like, oh shoot, I need some feedback on that. Like she's giving me feedback and I feel like a failure. I feel embarrassed, but shame on me for thinking that that my life was going to be perfect, that I was going to execute perfectly every time. So Max was like, hey, pull that apart again, reevaluate your process, the tools, whatever, reevaluate your process, mine the gold out of that, and then execute again. And so he just talks about like, that's the process of life. And that's how to succeed. That's how to fail successfully.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. How hard do you think it is for a person, a man, woman, to allow someone else in on their failure process and to give them access to give feedback? Because I know early on for me, man, it was a huge struggle, like to allow someone to see you in your worst moment or in your attempt in your worst moment. That's really hard to do. And so, and from your perspective, and I want to hear your opinion on this, how hard do you think that is? But more importantly, how important do you think it is as a part of your growth?
You know, I honestly, it's so hard because of this thing called ego, right?
Yeah.
Like our ego, which we all have, we've all got that thing. And man, I take a baseball bat to that thing when I see it. No, I actually, I don't. I just try to call it out when I see it and be honest about it. But the truth is, it's so incredibly hard to get feedback, not in the areas that we're awesome, but in the areas that we're weak. And it's the time that we need to get feedback the most. And often when we look back to why is that so hard? Like, why is it so hard to have somebody go, hey, can we talk about this thing right here? Well, it's often so hard because of how we were handled, you know, young, growing up, and you fail in high school, bro. You get shamed. Like, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing to fail in high school. It's so embarrassing to fail in grade school. You know, rarely do you fail and you get this like hero moment where the people are like excited for you, and even your parents. One of the things that my dad did that really helped me is he said, hey, I want you to make all of your mistakes at home because you have mom and I here to help you.
That's good. Like,
bro, that's so rare.
Yeah, it is.
And even at that, right? Like I had a dad who was saying like, feel free to fail. And bro, it's still super hard. Like I didn't want to.
Right.
Because I feel like an idiot.
Right. And I can speak for myself. You know, I never had a dad in the home. Still don't know my dad till this day. And the person that gave me the courage to quote unquote fail in the home, like you said, was like someone that I trusted. Was my high school coach. You know, he just infused me with courage. Like, it's okay if you fail, because my whole idea of failure meant that if I fail, you would abandon me, because the only reason why you're around me is because I'm successful. So if I'm successful, then that means you love me, or you care for me, or you value me. And so I had built up this whole artificial idea of value. and love and success based off success. So when I failed, it felt like the sky was falling for me personally. And I'm sure it feels like that for a lot of people. But the whole point of me bringing up that example is that for the listener on here or the watcher who's watching this, don't allow your success to become your identity in the sense of you feel value because you are success. You're Greg, still high value.
How did you separate that? Because it's so hard for people, it's a performance mentality, right? So if we just call it what it is, it's a performance mentality and mindset. How did you get to a place where you could separate yourself from your performance? You could separate your own self-identity from your ability or inability to produce?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it didn't come on till later in life, to be honest with you, because I had to work through a lot of things that were deep rooted in my heart. Not having a dad, being a Hispanic kid and Black kid, mixed kid, being a pro athlete because, being successful as a pro athlete is like a badge of honor. So you want to, the more successful you are, the more dominant you are. So I had to work through all this mindset. And I got to a point, honestly, when I really started deepening my faith in God and he started kind of rewiring my identity and who I am. And here's where I got the real liberty is when I got an opportunity to share about my life and just kind of my story at one point. And I actually shared like a failure, like a hard failure in my life. And that was the most traction in the whole entire talk was me being open on my failure. And it was like almost like an epiphany for me. It was like, wow, like people connected more to God in my failure than they did in my success because it made me human to them as opposed to a leader, as opposed to whatever. And this was a while back. And so that to me was like, it was an aha moment. Like, oh, this is where the real goal was at. And so at that point, something like came off of my life, like the apprehension to be open about failure, that really changed in me. Like the dynamic in me, it changed. And really the vulnerability, because it spiked my vulnerability to be open with people, which essentially drew more people in to see, the transformation piece, which was phenomenal. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Man, I love that. And it's supposed to be that when we grow up, when we're really young, right? Our parents pour into us this unconditional love and they see all of our failures and we know it because kids, growing up zero, you start at zero, like you're just failing all day long. You're pooping your pants, you're drooling, like you can't feed yourself. Right. Even when you stand, like you take a few steps, you fall down. And so it's supposed to be that by the time we hit our adolescence, like we are convinced that we are not loved for what we can do. We are loved for who we are. And our parents were going to give us that, right? Like that was like this unconditional love gift that is part of our inheritance growing up. And so when that gets jacked up, right? When you don't have someone unconditionally loving you day in and day out, you don't have that foundation. And then you have to recreate that foundation. Like you have to tear out an old foundation, like this old rotten foundation of I have to succeed. If I want to get a girl, I got to like girls like me because I'm putting up the hoops, and guys want to hang around me because of how I do on the basketball court. And my coach is interested in me because I have talent, all these, whatever you tell yourself, whatever you think, which isn't even necessarily wrong. It's what you've learned. And man, tearing down that old belief system, untangling that mess is a really challenging thing to do. But if we don't go in there and untangle that mess, what happens is you never branch out of this one thing that I'm successful at. And you're always so hard on yourself. Mm-hmm. Like so incredibly hard on yourself. You're the judge of you. Like you're constantly judging you. And when you make a little tiny mistake, you're super pissed off. And so that thing, like, if guys can just stop and identify real quick, like, man, I have a performance mentality. I
Yeah.
I am real hard on myself when I don't get it right. I'm real hard on myself when I don't learn as fast as I think I should learn. I have a hard time telling other people where I'm really at and exposing that. Bro, that's so normal. It's so normal. Part of it's just human. The other side of it is that old mentality. And like you said, Greg, I think for identifying it's the biggest issue for starters.
Absolutely. And what ends up happening if you don't identify it, and really if you don't pursue, because it's not going to be just one thing and it's over. This is going to be an ongoing thing. You may dig and you may get a piece of it untangled, but then there may be some more that's underlying there. You have to have a pursuit about being well, because what happens is you can inherit and cultivate this critical assessment of yourself. And what that can do is spill over into how you deal with people. Like you become overly critical with the people that are around you that are put there to love you, So if they give you the truth, hey man, you know what? You need to brush your teeth because your breath really stinks. Like you probably shouldn't kiss your wife with that mouth, Oh man, what you talking about? My breath don't stink, like you can just get super over the edge about something. As I'm just being facetious, but you get my point. Like, you don't want to inherit this critical spirit about you that nobody can't come to you, or more importantly, you can't be checked, emotionally, mentally, physically. You can't be checked because you want to be an open book before God, before others. But more importantly, you want to give them hope. Like, man, if that dude is willing to be talked to, I can come to them, share my heart. He's not going to get offended. She's not going to get offended. They're not going to get offended, then there's going to be hope for me too. Let me ask you this. Like, do you think, for all the married guys on here watching this, do you think it's really hard for a married man to be open with their spouse in regards to like, hey, poke holes in who I am as a man? Like, do you feel like men struggle with that?
Bro, is there anything harder on this planet than standing in front of your wife and having her go like, I feel really disappointed right now? Bro, I mean, I think on some level, I would rather fight 100 barbarians, with just a knife than to stand in front of my wife and have her tell me, where she feels like I failed her. And that's just real. That's real. But the challenge is, as soon as we shield ourselves from failure, we've capped our growth. And that's just the truth, right? If you are a perfectionist, which I lean towards perfectionist, but okay, so where we want to get to is we want to get to excellence. That's where we're trying to get to. For all those perfectionists out there, you want to get to excellence. And excellence, the difference is the motive, the motivation. So I actually obsess quite a bit. If you know me really well, you know that I obsess over small details, especially things that are really important to me, how it's done, and then are they done right? And I can get pretty not mean about it. I can just get pretty there's a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do this. But for me, I feel like it's coming out of not all the time, but most of the time it's come out of this, I want things to be excellent. I want people to have an excellent experience, or I want my wife to feel important and cared for and loved. Right. And so it matters how I do this. But the challenge is, man, for those areas in our life where we are hiding, or where we can't get feedback, or where we're already critical. So that's how you're already criticizing yourself about it. Mm-hmm. You're already doing it to you. You're never good enough. Those places just cap our success. And here's the thing, even if you get driven, even if that thing makes you successful, right? Like I see a lot of men who become multimillionaires or whatever, can hit the baseball 300 yards or whatever, because they're just like, they just grind. It's their identity. It's who they are. Eventually that thing just crushes you because you can never live up to it forever, right? Like every boxer's eventually going to go out on his shield. You know, very few people are able to maintain such a high level of performance that eventually that they never have to face their failure. And the problem is you never really know who your friends are. You never really know why people care for you. You never really care for you just because of you. And that thing becomes you become a slave to your performance. And it's just it's a hollow life. So, you know, guys, we want you to get beyond this. And not just get beyond it like you only deal with it once. We want you to grab onto the mentality and the mindset of, okay, maybe I don't know how to love myself fully all the time. Maybe I don't know how to separate my failure from my identity, but we have to start that journey. And it can start in a bunch of different ways. It can start with you and God, right? You can say like, God, this is an area that I struggle in. I know I do. And then practically you can check yourself. When I start beating myself up, hold on a second. I got to find some compassion. Or when I start to pull away from other people, hold on a sec. You can't just run away because you think that they're going to reject you, right? Like you can set yourself accountable. One of the best ways though is to connect yourself to someone who is stronger than you in this area, right? Is to get around other men. So Greg, I honestly think that that's what's helped me the most is I'm looking at other men like Bill and my dad and Danny Silk and Dan Fairley. Like I'm looking at these other men in my life who model it, who like I see the back end of my dad's life, right? Like I know what it is. Danny Silk, like I know Danny Silk's life. And so on the back end, I know his kids, I know his wife, like I'm all up in that world. And I watch how he handles failure. I watch how he models it. You know, I watch how he cleans up his mess with his kids, or I watch how he cleans up his mess with his wife. And honestly, when you see it modeled for you, that's probably the biggest breakthrough that men can get. Because it's one thing to like go and grind inside of yourself and be like, you got to be compassionate. It's a whole nother thing to look at these people that you really respect. It's like watching a guy, professional athlete, and you watching him fail and him just like love himself through that. Man, if you're a rookie coming up, it's so helpful because you're like, okay, the standard is excellence. I clean up my mess. Yeah. My dad always says repentance restores the standard, right? So like, hey, if I don't succeed, I go back, I look, I figure out why. That's the repentance process. And then I give it another shot. That's so helpful. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to put it as repentance is the pivot point between ruin and restoration. Like which direction do you want to go in? Because you have a choice. You can make a choice. And oftentimes to be restored takes work. I want to hear your thoughts before I share a story with you. I want to hear your thoughts because you brought up a great point about cleaning up your mess. Let's unpack that a little bit for the men, because oftentimes when we make a mistake or we quote unquote fail, there's mess that's ensued because of that. And I want to unpack for the people that are watching, the men that are watching, what does it mean to clean your mess up? Like, give me your perspective on that. I have some thoughts, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hey, BraveCo men, I want to talk to you about our Foundations of Masculinity 12-week video series that we created for the guy that wants to grow stronger as a man. If you want to become a better leader, a better father, a better husband, have better relationships, this course is for you. And here's the thing. You get 12 incredible videos that literally walk you through step by step on how to grow. You also have homework with each one that is honestly pretty effective. And lastly, you get access to our private Facebook group. We're on there chatting with you guys. You can ask questions. You can connect with other men that are just like you. Go to braveco.org to check it out, and you can sign up today. Yeah, I love that, Greg. It's a good thought. So here's the biggest challenge with failing is, especially if you fail someone, which doesn't have to be a moral failure. But if you fail someone, then it begins to uproot or erode the trust in the relationship. And all like currency in relationship is trust. That's it. Like, so you only have as deep relationship as you have trust, and that's fine. So, trust is built not by the absence of mistakes, but by how we clean up a mess.
That's good.
Trust is also built through repeated success. So there's a study done by several major organizations, and I read this in a Maxwell book a long time ago. And what they found is that companies, well, I'll say it like this: like people who used a product. So, for instance, this is an iPhone. If I had a problem with my iPhone, and I contacted the company, and Mac helped me out really quick, right? Like the company helped me out really quick. They took care of me. They found out that customers were more loyal to that company, trusted that company more than if there had never been a problem. Because innately, we all know that there's going to be a problem at some point. The real question is, are you going to be willing to clean up your mess? How are you going to handle my failure? So marriage, it's the same thing, right? And so instead of trying to like avoid the fact that you messed up or avoid the fact that you have a mess to clean up, you got to remember, like, trust is on the other side of this process. And you're building you're putting relational equity in every time you clean up a mess or every time. So, I think ownership's the first part, right? So when you have made a mess, if I made a mess, let's say that with my wife, right? I wake up, my wife and I have a conflict, which isn't a problem. We have a conflict. I don't treat her kindly. I treat her unkindly. Let's say we leave from that scenario. It's my job to go back to her and say, and own it. Hey, here's what happened. I made a mess. Like you were telling me how you felt. I felt shame. And in my shame, I got angry and I directed my anger towards you.
Yeah.
Right. So the first part is ownership. I think the next part is you have to be able to hear the person. In order to own it, you have to hear how it affected them.
That's good.
Because it's such BS to own it. And then as soon as she starts telling me like, yeah, that felt really painful and I don't feel like I deserve, and if I shut her down or if I like, man, it's such BS, right? Like she has to be able to go, that was really painful for me. I felt a lot of shame or I felt a lot of anger and especially, we have to remember sometimes the mess isn't really small. Sometimes the mess is really big.
Mm-hmm.
So she may need to come back to me another week from now and say, hey, I'm still dealing with the fallout from your mess.
Mm-hmm.
And in counseling, I've seen this a lot, right? Like parents get a divorce. That's a big old mess for the kids.
Yeah.
It's not the kid's fault. Yeah. And the kids need to be able to come back, 3, 4, 5, 10 times and say like, I'm still hurting. And the parents need to be able to own that every time and to hear the kids out and to walk them through it. Or infidelity, right? Like I've seen a lot of guys and girls struggle with looking at porn. And man, if your wife can't come back to you and a week later, even after you've owned it and said, hey, I'm feeling a lot of pain from finding out that you were looking at porn last week. A lot of guys don't want to hear that because they feel shame.
Yeah.
Well, you're never going to rebuild trust in your relationship until your wife knows that she can stand in front of you and hand her emotions and her pain to you and you own it. And guess what, guys? If you can own that, oh my gosh, it becomes like that becomes this force that drives you guys together. Now you're doing something that you probably couldn't do before. You are owning a problem. She knows like this he's like owning his problem. I'm allowed to have a bad day and I'm allowed to share my emotions with him. And he does not freaking out about it. He's saying, hey, tell me about that. Right. So your wife could go like, oh man, I still feel a lot of pain. I feel a lot of anger towards you. I'm having a hard time trusting you. And a lot of guys blow up at that. Like, I'm never going to be good enough. If you can check your ego and go, wow, tell me about that. Like, I don't blame you for feeling that. I want to hear where you're at. And then the last thing is, to me, is what's your repentance process?
Yeah.
Because just saying I'm sorry, a lot of us stop at sorry. We were taught to say sorry, right? Like you hit your sister in the head with a freaking plastic baseball bat, and your mom's gonna grab you and probably hit you with whatever she's got in her hand a couple times, and then make you say sorry, right? Like that's our childhoods, is like you say sorry. So we learn these magic words like I'm sorry, and we think that because we said I'm sorry, that fixed everything. No, that's just a recognition that you did something wrong. But repentance is, let's use the pornography one. Let's just use that as an example, right? Because a lot of guys struggle with this, and it creates a big mess in the family. And a lot of guys don't know how to clean up that mess. And the thing is like, I want to be able to go back to my wife and go, here's what happened.
Yeah.
Here's I was feeling lonely. I was feeling shame. I was feeling whatever. Here's what happened. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's my plan. How does this feel to you? What do you think about it? Now, I'm not putting the responsibility on her for creating my plan. I'm the owner. This is my problem. This isn't her problem. Right. But I want her to be powerful to speak into it. So she could say to you, that still doesn't feel very good. And I go, hey, thanks for the feedback. I'm going to go back and work on this plan. So a simple plan would be like, man, I've had a cycle of struggling with pornography, right? Like this thing's come up more than once. So my last plans haven't worked. Great. I'm going to call whatever, Bethel Transformation Center, and sign up for their sexual addiction program.
Right.
And I'm going to do that on Monday.
Yep.
Like your wife's probably going to go, sounds like a solid plan.
Yeah.
Now, who's holding you accountable to that?
Exactly.
Who's holding you accountable to that? Yeah. And then having someone hold you accountable to that. Like to me, when you're cleaning up a mess, it needs to have those components. It's got to have the owner. You got to be able to hear how it made the people feel. And then what are you going to do to really work through it? What's the process of repentance? And man, if guys could do that, honestly, like your marriage will go to another level. And I see that a lot, Greg. Like I've worked counseling married couples for the last 20 years of my life. And here's what I see, honestly, when we're talking about moral failure, I see marriages better than where they were after an affair. If couples will do this, they're stronger because you don't have the same marriage anymore. You have a whole new operating system, and it takes it to the next level. And people will say this all the time, like before our affair or before the pornography or before the acting out, like we were never this close. And so like by owning this mess and by cleaning it up, like, man, it takes you to a whole new level. It's phenomenal. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on it though too. Yeah,
that's good, man. All of that ownership, hearing that person, allowing them to share and express, and then what's your action plan? Like what's your repentance process, as you put it? All of those, I agree 1,000%. And that's a great outline for those who are listening. I would also throw in there is authenticity. You need to be authentic with the person or the scenario. Like, hey, I have a plan in place, but I'm going to need help to execute this plan. That's being authentic and being open. And then humility, I think, is the thread that runs through all of that, man. You got to really humble yourself to get to a place of ownership, to get to a place where someone can give you feedback without you going not hysterical, but historical, where you just blow up and you have this historical eruption where nobody wants to even talk to you anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you plan your process out, is that something that you're actually going to follow through? And what are the things that you were putting in place to actually help you follow through with that plan? All of that takes humility. You got to really humble yourself. It sucks sometimes when you got to eat some humble pie that you or me created, like sometimes, when you fail, it's not just because the devil is coming against you. Sometimes failure is of your own doing. You know, we do things, whether we do it intentionally or unintentionally. Do you have the wherewithal about yourself? Say, oh, hold up. You know what? Let me circle back and clean, like we said, clean our mess up or clean the mess up. I tell you what, it infuses you and your growth and your maturity in God as a man, as a woman, as someone, a human being. It infuses you with accelerated growth if you're able to really like put yourself in a position of humility to go through that type of process. I think for me, those two things are very, very critical for you. I mean, pursuit is a big, big deal. And even when you get well, like still have check-in. Babe, how you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, and it deepens your communication with your spouse. It deepens your communication with your children, because your children will inherit your process on how you communicate, how you're trying to process it. And obviously their age plays a factor, but trust me, kids really flock to people who are authentic enough to share and communicate, because it gives them liberty to say, you know what, I can share my true feelings and know that I'm still going to be restored. I'm still going to be okay. Like I still am safe. I'm still am protected. All that stuff matters. And truth be told, that was not my strength growing up. Like I had to learn that, you know, I really had to focus in and concentrate and acquire that process in my life, because again, my whole process was like, make sure everything's good, make sure that I'm a success. And I really lost in that my ability to communicate when I was frustrated, when I was pissed off, when I was sad, and when I felt let down, when I made a mistake, when it was me that made the mistake, not even being confident enough to apologize, you know, like I didn't even, that was foreign to me. Like I got to apologize. I know I'm wrong, but nah, my pride's not going to allow me to apologize. But once I started the process and allowed it to be an ongoing evolvement in my walk and in my journey, even till this day, you know, that has really deepened my maturity, not only in God, but just as a human being, you know, in self. And practically speaking, my kids are a byproduct of that, because if I shut down, insulate, you know, start thinking all these thoughts, then the people around me, including my children, will see that and be like, oh, that's how you process being frustrated or being let down or being upset. Or, you know what? I just not even going to say anything because I don't want dad or mom to go historical on me. You know what I mean? I'd rather have peace than them going historical on me. But if you do the opposite and you process it through, hey, you know what? Daddy messed up. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm trying to be better. And here's the thing. Your language in that is super key. Guys, hear me out on this. The apology don't look like this. The cleaning up of your mess doesn't look like this. I messed up, so what? You supposed to forgive me because that's what the Bible says, or something crazy like that. Like you don't you don't want to deliver that type of apology. You want to be humble, like, babe, I messed up. That's on me. I'm willing to grow. I'm trying to grow. Please, I give you full access to speak into me. Okay, so she'll say something once, but full access means that that's going to be an ongoing thing. She's going to say something to you next week, and then the week after that, and then the week after that. But what you're doing is you're infusing confidence, liberty into your home, into your relationships, and more importantly, into yourself, that I'm willing to go on this cleaning up mess journey, knowing that if I humble myself, I can see the growth that I want to see in my personal life, as well as the relationships that are surrounding around me.
Bro, can you share your story? What happened at the shooting school? Can you do that in Alabama?
Oh, yeah. So recently,
I think it's just such a good moment.
Yeah, I told my wife that story when I got home. She was laughing, and she was proud of me too at the same time. But so, essentially, openly, honestly, I struggled with letting people down, because my whole thought was, when I was growing up, again, not knowing my dad not being in the home, single mother, I felt when I was growing up, if I let you down, not only did I make you mad, but it was opportunity for you to walk away from me because I let you down. Like I'm not of value. So my value system was very, very low. So I always struggled with that when I was really younger, growing up, even, into my adult years, I was struggling with that because I want people to be happy. I think I'm a people pleaser at heart, but it was built on the wrong foundation. And so when we were at this shooting school, the night before, I was just kind of spending some time with God, and God gave me language. He said, you know why you struggle with this is because you struggle with being let down. And here's why. And he showed me my childhood, just all of the disappointing moments. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's it. That's I have language now. And I felt like I got a great breakthrough, which I did because I got the revelation of that. Well, the next day, we go and we're doing this, it's kind of like a competition. And obviously all the men there, super competitive. I'm competitive, and we're shooting targets from long range. And up until that point, I'm killing it. Like I'm not a hunter. I don't shoot rifles all the time, but like I was really confident because I could see from long distance, and I'm hitting these targets from all over the place, y'all. I'm killing it. And one shot, boom, one shot, boom, one shot, boom. Super successful. Well, when we go to this competition, we're paired up with a partner, and my partner is super successful. So we're like, man, we got this, man. We're going to crush this whole thing. Ain't nobody going to touch us. We're going to get this done. Well, we're shooting, boom, 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 knocking it down. Last shot of the competition, we smoking everything. The time we're doing it for time, and we're crushing the time. Last shot's my shot, and I hit this same shot the day before like it was nothing. So I shoot, miss, shoot again, miss, shoot again, miss. Now the time is accumulating. Turns out I end up sitting there for like 10 minutes, and I'm sweating profusely because I'm so mad. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so like, I can't believe I let my partner down. We should have crushed this. All the stuff that I struggle with came welling up in that moment. And I was like, I was so pissed off, and I was so sad in myself and letting my partner down. So I finally hit the target, and I get done. And truth be told, I almost quit in the middle of it. I was like, nah, forget it, man. Like, I'm not going to do this no more. Like, this ain't, what happens is this, seriously, when you go through something, your natural ability is wanting to quit because you can't accomplish the task. And then you start to make excuses on why you quit, why you left it. And my excuse was going to be, well, this isn't my lane. I'm not going to be a hunter anyway. So I don't need to, this don't mean nothing. So I was going to have all these excuses on why I stopped. But I was like, you know what, let me try to finish. And I ended up finishing, but I was so mad. So I stepped back and I walked out, and I was just, go ahead, interject
a little bit. Let me just interject because, so at the shooting school, it's like a VIP event. It's invite only. There's a bunch of guys that are, really cool dudes that, most of them, this isn't what they do, but some of them, this is what they do, long range shooting. I put on these quite a few of these events. And so I'm there just leading the event and teaching these guys how to shoot long range. And then Greg's crushing it the first day. Greg's never really shot a gun before, let alone we're shooting targets out to, 600 yards and 800 yards. And then the second day, I always kind of turn up the heat on these guys because you can get kind of inside your head and think that you're big stuff. Like, oh man, I'm super good. When there's no pressure, right? Like when you can take a long time and when there's a bunch of dudes there to help you. And so the next day we kind of turn up the heat, and Greg was doing awesome. You were just crushing it. And all the guys, you kind of get a reputation, and like the first day and a half, guys start to be like, oh man, ain't nobody could touch Mark and nobody could touch Greg. Like these guys are insane. And so they got partnered up together and like you said. And so it's super fun I thought you guys for sure. I was like, they're gonna sweep this whole event. And there was like 10 partners in that. And sure enough, man, when you and Mark went through, you started shooting the 200-yard plate and then the 400-yard plate, and you had to hit the red head at 500, and you had to hit the half guy at whatever 550, and then you have to hit the bullseye, like you have to hit the small target at 600, which, you know, and you guys you got there at like 2 minutes and 45 seconds, where everyone else was like way longer, you know, because you guys had just blown through it. You would hit one target, Mark would hit another target, you'd hit a target, Mark would hit another target, and I was just like, dang, these guys are on fire. And then when you got to that 600-yard target, what happens is all the other targets, your partner can help you out. So let's say it's a 200-yard target. If Greg misses, Mark can shoot that target and they can keep advancing. But the last target is the 600-yard headshot. You have to hit it in the head. It's a steel target. So when you hit the target, it goes ping. It's this really gratifying sound. And we can see it as well through our spotting scopes. Well, Mark has a 600-yard silhouette and Greg has a 600-yard silhouette. So they are both going ping, 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 shooting up through this course. And then Mark takes his out right away, like 2 minutes, 45 seconds. And then Greg shoots, misses. And then shoots, misses. And then Greg shoots again. And we're like, bro, I can't even see where you're hitting. And I'm watching this build. And as it goes to like 3 minutes, 3:45, like sitting down by yourself, having all these guys watch you, a minute goes by, it's a long time. It's a long time. And then I look over at one point, it was like 4 minutes in, and you are dripping sweat. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, that's when I realized this is so good for Greg. I actually sat back, and instead of making it easier on you and saying like, hey, Mark, go ahead and just shoot that target, I realized in this moment, like, oh, this is going to be good, because I get in those situations with all these guys as the leader, and I want to do really good, right? Like I want to show all the guys that I can shoot the best, and then, oh, dang. So I've had the same experience that you're having. I've had the same experience, but I get to watch you have it. So, okay, share what happened. So after you finally hit the target, and we were all kind of relieved. We were all kind of like, dude, you got to that last target at 2 minutes, 45 seconds. You guys ended at like 12 minutes. Yeah. So you sat there for 9 minutes or 8 minutes at that one target, shooting shot after shot after shot. And so we were all kind of like, thank God this is done. Yeah.
And for me, it felt like 2 days.
Bro, your beard was longer when you were done.
Tell me about it, man. That's what it felt like. But when I got done, I was happy to finish, but I was more frustrated than I was happy. Put it like that. Yeah. I was more frustrated that I let my partner down, and that we could have won. And all the stuff that I dealt with when I was, it felt like it just all came, like it was an opportunity to really believe, did God heal me of this last night? After having this whole encounter with God, like, okay, I had this breakthrough. I know it was the Lord. I know God did something in me. Now, do I really believe it? And this whole scenario presented itself. So when I got done, I stood up. And I mean, you could probably see the steam coming off of me. That's how upset I was. And I stepped back, and I'm just standing there by myself, and other guys are getting up and shooting, and I'm fuming. And God's like, don't you remember that we had this conversation yesterday? You're done with that. You don't have to feel this way anymore. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like it was just like someone just affirming in me what I already had knew, but I had to really believe it in my heart and to myself that this is for me. And so, I mean, immediately it just like changed my whole attitude. And then we came back around. It's like, hey, you guys want to shoot? We'll go through one more time. Let's go through one more round. And then we went through and just annihilated it. Like it didn't even hold me back. So it was like breakthrough, testing. How do you react? How do you handle the mess, quote unquote, your mess? And then, okay, let's move forward. And I feel like that's like the cycle that's going to be going through your life. Do you want breakthrough? Absolutely. Does all the men on here want breakthrough? Absolutely. In any area of your life. Okay, great. You get the breakthrough, but that doesn't mean that the testing is not going to still come and it's not going to happen, because in my case, it happened the very next day. How do you go through it? How do you react when you actually don't do as well as you anticipated? What's your reaction? You know, how do you clean your mess up? How do you more importantly, how do you respond? What's your response is the question. What's your response? You know,
man,
and then
it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah. You have incredible potential. You know, you just have so much potential, and you have all the ability. You got a great mindset to be a great shooter. You've got attention to detail and really great focus and good trigger control. And can you bounce back from a miss? You know, that's the thing that we were looking at, and that's the thing that we were testing. Can you calm yourself down when the clock's going, and can you pick yourself up after you just completely flop? You know, worst flop of the day. Can you pick yourself up, and can you set your identity? You know, can you not make this about your identity? Can you just make it about today's journey? Can what happens today just be about my growth process? And I watched you go through that. And you know, we're talking about something trivial. We're talking about shooting guns but you know, it really doesn't matter what we do. We feel the same way. You know, I feel that I get just as pissed off about missing a target as I do almost anything in life. And I had a similar experience. So I sat down. We had done this FTX, which is a cross. It was basically it was like we had to navigate through the woods with compasses in the dark at first and navigate our team. So we were all broken up into teams of like 5, and different leaders were leading different teams. Mm-hmm. And so I was the navigator for my team. Mm-hmm. And which basically meant I had the compass, and I had to like get my team without getting caught. So there was like these teenage boys riding around through the woods with airsoft guns, and we as a team, we're on property we've never been on, and there's swamps and all kinds of brush and thorns and briars, and it was really cool. It was like this 2-mile long course that we got to go through. It was just this team building exercise. And we had maps, like these paper maps that showed outline the property. And what happened is we had distances. So we'd get to different checkpoints, and it would say like 300 yards at 136 degrees. And so you'd have to like stay on and estimate where 300 yards was, and hopefully you found your next target, you know, your next objective. And so, man, right out of the gate, right, I take my team. And I'm like, okay, I'm charting my path, and I'm walking, I'm counting my steps, and we get to a road. So we break through the brush, and we get to this road that's sweeping to the left, and we still have like another 100 yards to go. But I don't trust myself. I don't trust that I counted the steps right. I don't trust that I used the compass right. So then I tell my team like, hey, I think we just need to walk left down this road, you know? And bro, I got my whole team so backwards. We like walked down the road. We got off the path. We got completely, and man, it was so embarrassing. Like I had like 3 times like that where I realized at one point, where you took a left, you should have went straight. You didn't trust yourself. Like you didn't trust that you're on the right path. And I literally stopped, and I turned around to my team and said, hey, here's what's going on. I went left. I didn't trust myself, and I took us the wrong path. That's my fault. Right. Now we're going to have to do extra work to get back to where we were. And we're going to have to go through this really crappy, you know, and it rained, did all kinds of stuff. And then, right. So we finally, I got our whole team shot too, which I think every team got got shot. But just again, like the whole morning was full of failures, and some of it was because of laziness. Like I didn't get my team off of the path far enough and into the woods. And so these boys driving around saw us and, started shooting at us. And there was like these really tense moments where, the team's frustrated because they're getting shot at, and we're running through brush and getting tangled up. And you got tangled up in a bunch of barbed wire. Like I got caught in a bunch of briars and whatever, man. It was like a bunch of stuff. And again, having to take ownership, like, hey man, super sorry. That was my fault. I didn't take us far enough in, didn't got lazy. Then we get up to, at the end of this cross training process, right? At the end of this thing, we pop out and we all partner up in teams of 2, and it's a competition, and it's forever who can ever shoot, whatever team can shoot these targets in the quickest amount of time. So I jumped up there first with my partner, and right away, 200 yards, like I miss the first shot. And 200 yards is like, bro, on a bad day.
That's a layup for you. That's a layup.
Easy, bro. I miss it. Right over the top. And then I'm like, what is going on? Then I shoot the 440-yard target, and I'm like way high. And then I shoot and I hit it, but I'm way high. I'm like, what is happening? And I shoot the 500 or the 600-yard target, and I'm not hitting where I want to hit. And then I get to the 830-yard target, the 890-yard target, and I completely miss the target. And I'm just like, what is happening? How do I miss this target? And my partner's a new guy, really nice guy, and he's frustrated. I'm frustrated. Our time sucked. It's raining. And although I'm frustrated, I'm trying to just like take it like a champ. Like, hey, we miss sometimes. That's just what happens. And so next group comes up and they shoot the targets. Boom, 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 boom. And they're missing and they're shooting high. And the next group comes up and they're shooting the targets. They're missing high. And pretty soon I said, hey, let me see that rangefinder, which a rangefinder is a device that tells you how far away stuff is. Oh, right before I got the rangefinder, my partner said to me, he said, hey, are you happy with how you shot? And it was like a half an hour after I'd shot. I said, no, I'm not happy with how I shot. He said, yeah, I didn't think you were. I said, bro, like, I'm not angry, but I'm not happy with how I shot. I feel really frustrated right now, right? Like I feel really frustrated. I hate missing, and I hate not knowing why I miss. So then I'm watching all these other groups go up there and shoot because they're coming up 2 at a time. So the guys can't see the course until they get there. And then the clock starts and these guys got to like get their stuff and make the shots really quick. And all that. You've got 6 shots each so you only get a certain amount of shots too. Like if you miss your shots, you don't get more ammo. So anyways, I get the rangefinder and I range the targets and realize, oh, whoever set this course up didn't have the right ranges.
You didn't have the right information.
It's wrong. Yeah, didn't have the right information. So our failure, like a whole bunch of groups' failure, wasn't because of what we did. It was because of what somebody else did. Mm-hmm. And it was such a good lesson for me, right? Because a lot of times in life, we fail not just because of what we do, but because we weren't set up for success.
That's good.
But it still matters how you handle that failure, right? It still matters. It mattered before I even knew what had happened. I still had to think to myself, I was checking my ego, and bro, it was hard. Mm-hmm. Like it was hard, it was hard for me. I was just like frustrated. But then I just had to be like, okay, it's okay to it's okay to miss. It's okay because I've been on the other end of that spectrum where I didn't do a good job and I missed in front of a bunch of guys, and then I'm pissed off and I'm embarrassed. What's really happening is I'm embarrassed, right? I'm embarrassed. And so, it's just another good lesson of like, man, listen, not all of our failure is because of stuff that we did. But how you handle it you know, matters.
Yeah.
And when I found out that the ranges were wrong, I really had to make sure that I didn't make a big deal out of it. Because my ego wanted to be like, hey, y'all screwed us over. You know, I really wanted to make sure that I was like, hey, no big deal. Let's let the other guys know, you know, what these ranges are. And so, you know, man, we want you to be successful. We want you guys to be able to unlock all the potential in your life in every area. Honestly, we want you to be the best husbands, the best leaders, you know, the best that you can be. And the path and journey to that is through this R&D process of success and failure. You can't just be searching for success. You got to be looking at your failures, finding the gold in them, pulling it apart, becoming an owner, understanding that everyone's going to go through this process. And as you're going through it, you're getting better. You're getting stronger. You're breaking off old mindsets like Greg. Like, you're going to get tested. What you believe to be true about you is going to get tested. And that's a good day. That's a good thing. Because I guarantee you the next time Greg steps up to do that same thing again, whether he hits a target or whether he misses, it won't shake his identity, right? It won't shake that thing in him that says, man, all these men are disappointed in you. It will just make him frustrated that he missed, which he should be, but it won't shake his identity. And so, you know, I think the one last thing that we didn't, we're a little long, but I think the last thing that we should remind guys is that the easiest path to success is not by learning from your own mistakes. There's necessary failure and there's unnecessary failure. And unnecessary failure to me is by having to learn all these mistakes on your own. You know, it's doing things that it's like you take an unnecessary risk. Don't take an unnecessary risk just to risk something. But man, when you can be in a group of men, that's why being a company of men, right? I've got 12 guys that I run with. Literally every week I'm running with these guys. They're telling me about their life. I'm asking questions. I'm getting their wisdom. I'm watching their successes and failures. And the standard, what happens is my standard for myself gets raised to our group standard. So when these guys go home, their standard for their marriage, for how they talk to their wife, is my standard. Like, they're living at my level because that's what I was good at. Like, right? Like, that's what I'm good at. So when I go home, their level's elevated. But these are all businessmen. So when I come to BraveCo and I'm thinking business, okay, my standard of excellence is raised to their level. I want to do business how they do business. I want to think how they think. And we have raised the level, the standard. And then together as a group, we're talking about our failures. So, right, it creates a culture of health and openness. And so I want to just encourage you, man, like, you cannot do this on your own. You can't clean up your mess on your own. You're not going to come up with the perfect action plan. You're not going to come to a perfect place of identity and confidence, because you have to have other men that are pouring that into you and supporting you and caring for you and loving you on you. And so, you know, start a group, jump into a group, you know, join a group, join a church group, like, find ways to get around men who are further along than you or willing to run beside you and grow together. But Greg, anything left to say about that?
No, I would just say, as we wrap up, guys, just your response is very key on how you deepen your growth as a man, how you deepen your growth as a human being, as a father, as a parent, as a son. Your response matters, and don't be afraid to pursue what that looks like. And when you do get breakthrough, go after some more and desire more.
It's awesome.
Response is critical on how you do it. And I would also add, in addition to that, is your community will be key to that, as well as what Jay's touching on. Is what kind of community do you have around that you can respond and they'll hold you accountable to your response. So I'll just leave it there. Mm-hmm.
Love it. Guys, I want to pray for you. Father, thank you for each man that's on here. And Lord, I thank you that before they ever do anything, before the foundations of this earth were laid, God, you knew them, you loved them, you cared for them. You had each man in mind, Lord, and you took the best attributes of you, Father, and you put them into each man, unique, incredible, special, purposeful. And Lord, for the men in here that felt like, man, my family set me up for failure from the beginning. This wasn't even my fault. Like, I didn't have a dad that poured into me like Greg. I didn't have, my mom was working all the time. Like, I didn't have this good foundation, Father. Like, the deck was stacked against me. Lord, we ask, Father, that you would come and put them into a family, Lord, that can help rebuild that, Lord, that you would bring confidence to these men, Father, that they would feel fathered by you. And Lord, that they would get that good inheritance like you did for Greg, or they would get that good inheritance back, Father, what they're missing. And Lord, I ask for men that have had recent failure, that are just really struggling with the shame of what they've done. Lord, you come and you break shame. And Lord, I ask that you would do that you would come and say, hey, hold on, this isn't you, that you're not a failure. This isn't your identity. You failed. There's a difference. And now you get to clean up the mess. Lord, I ask that hope would return to men, Lord, that they would feel courage and strength and hope. And then God, I just ask that you would begin to convict men of their potential, like conviction, like bring hope to the place where they're living under their potential. Like, hey, you're too great to be doing this, or hey, you're born to be a leader, like positive stuff too. Like, God, would you bring hope to places in men's life where they're supposed to be overcomers? Lord, would you give them visions and insight into what you created them for, Father, so that it would be like fuel, it'd be empowerment to push through. And God, I thank you for each man. Give us courage to do our day and to push forward. Amen. Guys, thank you so much. Greg, thanks for jumping on here with me. And men, y'all stay brave out there. We will see you next week. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the BraveCo podcast. If you like this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, leave us a great comment. And if you like this episode in particular, share it with your friends and family. That helps us to spread the word. Guys, stay brave. We'll see you next week.